Everyone, my name is Jeff St. Laurent, and this is the Tuesday Live Show, and today's topic is how to start your own podcast today. So I'm going to talk about starting your own podcast. So literally, if you've been thinking about one, you could do your first episode and publish it today, because so many people overcomplicate things, and you don't have to overcomplicate things. My motto is get it out there, get exposure, create conversations, follow up, and get paid. So with that in mind, I help coaches transition to a full-time business. And before we jump into that topic, I do record all of these live shows and I put them on my website at sellingcoaching.com in my university. So check that out. Like I said, I help coaches transition to a full-time business. I have a ton of great resources there for you. Right on the homepage, you can check out, if you enter your name and email address, it will get you instant access to one of my audio programs, and that is Launching Your Coaching Business, the first 3 vital steps. So definitely check that out. Also, in addition to that, those of you might have heard of my 14-day GoPro challenge. I launched another one today. In fact, today is the first day, September 22nd, if you're watching this live. If you're watching the recording of this at any other time, you definitely deserve to check that out at my website, GoProChallenge.com. It's a 14-day challenge designed to get your message out to the world, understand your pricing and packaging. You're going to be doing an event, following up on that event, and understand how to invite, create content, and follow up to get clients. And the great part is it's going to keep you, it's going to school you or educate you on a duplicatable, repeatable process that is going to allow you to get your message to market, follow up, and get paid. So check that out, GoProChallenge.com. If you're watching this live, head over there now. Today's day one. You can still jump in. Registration's still open. So with that being said, let's talk about starting your own podcast. So this is something I've been doing now for, you'll be able to figure out how long. I have a daily podcast called the Selling Coaching Minute. And that is, if you go to sellingcoaching.com and you go to my university, and off to the left there, you're going to see the categories. One of the categories at the bottom says podcast. If you click that, it'll take you to my podcast. It's a daily podcast, and it's about a minute long, hence it's called the Selling Coaching Minute. So their episodes are between a minute and a half at the most. And I've been doing that daily. I believe this morning I just published my 723rd episode. So, we're going on a couple years soon. So with that being said, well, just over a couple years, I think it is. But either way, it's a daily podcast. You can check out what I do there. And I want to kind of simplify the podcasting process to you today. So literally you can end this show, or you're watching the recording of this, and you can literally start yourself up and have a published episode by the end of the day. Now, here's the thing about it. All I want you to think about a podcast is, now there's a lot of depth to what you can do with podcasts in terms of advertising and publication, and in terms of editing and sound, and getting audiences. And so there's a whole lot of depth to it. I'm just going to start you from ground zero. I'm assuming that if you already have a podcast and you've been doing it for a little while, the title of how to start your own podcast today didn't appeal to you. So I'm assuming if you're interested in watching this, you're thinking about starting your own podcast. So that's where I'm going to kind of take you today, from zero to getting a podcast going. And then you can allow it to evolve and add in a bunch of stuff. And if you want to take it to another level, you can look into some of those things, but you need to get started first. So literally, in order to record your podcast, and it's virtually zero cost to doing this as well. All I want you to think about a podcast is an audio recording. That's all it is. And in fact, you don't need fancy equipment. All you need is something you have. I know all of you have is a phone, right? All of you have a phone. And most likely you have a newer phone, but even if you had an older phone, it doesn't even matter, because if you were to use your phone, all you need is a voice memo app. And if you have an iPhone, most iPhones, and I'm sure Android phones, etc., come with a voice memo app. If you don't have a voice memo app, and all a voice memo app is something, and I'm actually going to go there now to show you, all a voice memo app is literally something, I don't know if you can see this here, but it's those recordings, and if you hit this red button, like if I can do this in reverse, now it's recording. And this is actually recording me right now, as you can see. And when I'm done, I hit stop. And now I have that new recording. And I can actually even edit the recording and kind of trim off the ends if I want to. And now I have an MP3 file. Like, that's all a recording is. And so in its simplest form, you could use your phone. If you don't have a voice memo app, you can go to the App Store and get a free voice memo app. There's tons of them out there. Just write voice memo. We're recording voice memos, and a bunch of stuff's going to come up. And yes, there's going to be paid versions of it, I'm sure, which have all these other features, but you don't necessarily need any of that right now. You need to record your voice to something, and this is the simplest and easy way to do it. Now, a couple tips on this. In fact, for what it's worth, my Selling Coaching Minute, if you check that out, like I said, go to sellingcoaching.com in my university. In the categories, the bottom option is my podcast, so you can listen to some of those. So when you listen to it, I record all of those to my phone, like to my iPhone using this. Now I have, case in point, I have a fantastic microphone set up. I can edit audio. I know how to do all that stuff, but I don't do that. Why? Because it's so stupidly easy to record it right to my phone and then just upload it right to where I'm putting it. Now, when I edit mine, when I bring mine up there, I actually edit in my intro and an outro. I have a pre-recorded intro that says, "Hey, this is Jeff St. Laurent with the Selling Coaching Minute, helping coaches transition to a full-time business." I think that's my intro. And my outro, whatever it is like, if you're looking to learn more about, how I can help you, I have a ton of resources, visit sellingcoaching.com and my university, whatever. It's an outro. So instead of saying that every time, I have it pre-recorded, an intro and an outro. And so I just send it over my phone, I dump it into the thing, I produce it, and I save it, and I upload it to the software. Like, that's all it takes. And I'll talk you through that spot. But the whole point is that I utilize this, and I have great recording audio equipment, right? The only tip I'll give you is, if you're using a phone as an example, these microphones are, I believe it's called omnidirectional, which means they just record from all directions. So they pick up on like every single sound that's out there. So you just want to make sure you're sensitive to where you're recording. Even if you're recording in a room that's next to the street, you're going to get street noise potentially. If you've got a fan on the room, a heater, an air conditioner, or a regular fan, a heater goes on, someone in the next room flushes the toilet, you get screaming kids in the other room, someone's got the TV on, they're walking up the stairs heavy, like that, you're going to potentially hear some of those things. So you would want to be conscientious of the environment and do it where there's not a lot of, if any, ambient sounds, because those things will be picked up. With that being said, you can still find a time where you can record a podcast to here. They also have their very simple microphones that you can get on Amazon, or type in, like lavalier microphone, or, external microphone for iPhone, or for whatever phone you have. And for $20, $30, you can spend a whole crap load more than that. You'll get a microphone that actually plugs into the bottom of the phone, and you can wear it on your lapel. That's a lavalier microphone, or you can have it on a microphone stand. And now you're going to actually get much better recording, but you can still use your phone. You don't need to have a fancy setup. So for some small money, that way you could also get something to record right to your phone. But again, you don't need fancy equipment. But again, if you're going to do something today, which is the theme of today, you get your phone out, you get a voice memo app if you don't already have one, and you record your first episode. You don't have to worry about music and introduction and editing it. And if you need to edit off the ends, you can even edit off of this as well. Don't be overly perfectionistic and be like, oh my God, I messed up a word, or like, you just correct yourself. You talk. It could be a live thing. It doesn't have to be this perfect podcast with this picture perfect sound. Again, you can evolve it as you go along. The idea is to publish your first episode and start something, so you can start getting something out there. Even if you're like, oh, well, I got to think of a name. Like, well, okay, think of your name. It's whatever it is. Mine was the Selling Coaching Minute, because my episodes are a minute long, and the name of my business is Selling Coaching, the Selling Coaching Minute. You know what I mean? That's all it needs to be right here. So don't let those things paralyze you, is my point. Because even if you think of a name, whatever your coaching business is, if mine was, originally when I started off, my initials Jeffrey St. Laurent, JSL. So I started off with JSL Coaching, right? So if I was still there and I didn't have another business name, I might just say, the JSL podcast, or the JSL Coaching podcast. I mean, just start it off or use your name, Jeffrey St. Laurent Podcast. So is it sexy? Is it sleek? Is it cool? It's no, probably not. But can you start there and evolve it? Yes, because you're not going out there and all of a sudden you're getting all these subscribers. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. No one's going to be listening to it right away. That's the reality of it. So start something off and then evolve it. So now you're in week 3 and you finally think of a great name, or you're in month 2 and you get a better microphone, or now you're in month 4 and you edit a little bit or add in some music or you get some cover art done. Okay, so what? You're in month 4 now. Like, great. So now instead of having no episodes and trying to be perfect from the start, you've got a handful of episodes, or like me, if you were doing a daily podcast, which I don't necessarily recommend, but if you were going to do something like that, then you do it. You've got a handful of you've got a bunch of episodes if you're in month 4, right? So you've evolved and you've practiced. That's the art of getting yourself out there and taking action. So now you've got something to record to. And you can record to something like this at zero cost, right? No microphone, anything like that. You can start, it costs you $0. Now, the only other thing you'll need is if you want to publish it and get it up there, the audio recording needs to be hosted somewhere, which means if someone's going to click play and listen to it, it needs to be download from somewhere on the internet. That's what hosting means. And so there are a bunch of different podcast hosting websites out there that do that specifically. Now, there's a ton of them. You could do your own research. I have a specific recommendation. If you're watching this live or in the recording of this, in the description, wherever the description is below the video, you'll see that I put one of the resources and a link to one of the resources in there. It's something called Podbean, Podbean, Podbean. And Podbean, I did a lot of research in all that stuff and got a lot of recommendations from people that have done podcasts for years. Podbean, I believe, is one of the top 5 largest podcasting companies out there. And essentially what it does is when you have that MP3 file, meaning from your phone, once you have Podbean, you would actually subscribe to Podbean. There's actually a cost to it. And I believe, if I'm correct, if you pay in full for the year, it's $108, which is like, what, $7 a month, or I don't know what that works out to. I didn't do my math ahead of time, right? So, but either way, it's virtually, it's cost effective. In other words, $108 is not going to break you for the year. So if you're going to seriously have a podcast. So with that being said, now you've got Podbean. So now all you do when you're there, once you have that, is you record an episode to your phone, and I would suggest don't even record a real episode. Just hit record and be like, hey, my name is Jeffrey St. Laurent, and this is the test of a podcast. Be done. Go to the podcast app on your phone, upload the MP3 file to Podbean, give it a name, JSL podcast test, and publish it. Don't worry, no one's going to see it. Right? If everyone was going to see it, then, you've got an audience, but no one even knows you're doing this yet. So don't worry about it. So you publish it. Right? And so now you can go and you can listen to it, and just listen to it, through your phone, because that's where most people are going to listen to it. Go listen to it, through some headphones or maybe through some speakers or whatever, and see how it sounds. And if it sounds good, take note of that. Like, okay, I can do that. Or if you're like, oh, wow, my dogs are barking in the background and you can hear them, a lot or whatever, just be cognizant of that when you do a real episode, right? But now you're just getting used to this. And so now you've got a hosting spot for your audio recordings, your MP3 files, right? So now what Podbean does is, number one, at some point, you don't necessarily need it right away. It's nice to have, but you want some cover art for it. This is just like the little image that, the little square, like an album cover essentially, that is like the show cover. Now, if you're not sure of your name and you're like, oh, the JSL podcast or Jeffrey St. Laurent podcast, and you're like, I don't really like that, then don't make a cover yet, or just do a quick filler cover. If you don't know how to do that, a great resource for you is Fiverr, Fiverr.com. And if you just go there, it's a freelance website where there's a bunch of freelancers where they offer small prices starting in increments of $5. That's, I call it Fiverr, where you could type in, podcast cover art or something like that. And you're going to get a bunch of people. You're going to find someone for $5 who can make you a little cover art based on the dimensions. And I'd actually recommend you doing that, even if if you're good at that stuff, go ahead and do it. But if you're not quite sure, or you can kind of do that, spend $5-10 and get it done beautifully to the right dimensions so you can upload it and have it work. Also, when you go to Podbean, it also gives you an opportunity to have a header, just like at the top of a Facebook page or your Instagram profile or LinkedIn. There's a header image that it has certain dimensions. Someone could do that as well. But if you don't know the name of it, you're not quite sure yet, just hold off a couple weeks or a week till you think of something, and then you go with it and you can have someone do that. Like I said, $5-10. You don't need to spend any more than that, and you're going to get something nice and professional. And don't go crazy, because you might want to change it down the road. So don't be like, oh, I'm going to spend $60 and just get something done for $5 and see how you like it, get it up there, and you haven't broken the bank, and you've got a podcast. Now, what a Podbean will do, that hosting software or any type of hosting, subscription service like that, is you can integrate that with different platforms. So if you want to bring it to iTunes, a lot of people obviously bring their podcast to iTunes. If you want to bring it to Spotify, iHeartRadio, you can publish it to Facebook. You can publish it to YouTube, any social media platform it can connect with. So now anytime you publish an episode, whether you publish it live, meaning I upload it now and publish it, or I schedule an episode to be published, let's say at a future date and time, tomorrow, let's say, whenever it publishes, it will automatically push out to wherever you want it to push out to. And so like I have mine go to Facebook and YouTube and iTunes and Spotify and iHeartRadio and some other ones I don't even know of, but either way, so it gets pushed out to there. And that's your podcast. That's your podcast. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Yes, like I said earlier at the beginning of this show, that there's more you can do with that, and you can add music, and you can have better sound, and and then you can have guests and interview, and obviously there's ways of having an introduction and a call to action and things like that. But if you want to get a podcast today, record to your phone, get something like a Podbean. Like I said, the links in the description to this video, my show that you're watching now, and you're in business. Literally, you could have your first episode today. And the only thing that's stopping you is your brain thinking, oh my God, it has to be something now that you probably can't make it now, or it has to take you time to do that, meaning it's got to be perfect. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It needs to evolve. If you start off now and there's pieces missing and it stays that way months and months and months down the road, as long as you're doing it, and even at that, that's still a win, right? If you're doing it consistently, and even if it's not evolving, and not that you have to have music or, a great name to your podcast or whatever, or a sound, even if the sound quality is not great, if it's got great content and people like it, people come across it, then they'll listen to it. So I just want to wipe away all of the negative things that you're saying yourself, or what you think that has to be coming out of the gates. And yes, you want to be professional, but I mean, if it's one thing, if you're launching a podcast and you already have a large audience. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, Jeff, I've got, a couple thousand people, I've got 20,000 people, I've got, whatever size your audience is, then yes, would I take a little extra time and do some of the first steps I've told you, but would you do a little extra time and get a cover art done, think of a channel, name, things like that, maybe get some music, or, so you're coming out of the gates with a higher level of quality? Absolutely. Would I have it take you more than a couple weeks at the most? No, I'd get it done in a week, meaning some things like cover art, you might have 2 or 3 days to get done, but while you're doing that, you could always get some music if you wanted to, or even with my Selling Coaching Minute, I could have done music. I have music for all my stuff, but it's a minute, and I had music in there, and it was too much for something so small. Mostly if you're doing a longer podcast, you do a 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute podcast, whatever the length is, you might have some quick, 8-second introduction music, and then, but remember, if it's adding time to add time, you don't need it. So think about like that. But whatever level you want to bring it to, the biggest thing is I should have given you enough today to start a podcast literally today and evolve it over time. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. Hopefully you can start start now, and then also recognize where you can start to take this. And that's obviously, when I work with my clients, when I do my one-on-one and group mentor coaching, that's where, if I'm going with someone in a direction of a podcast, that's where I help them start to utilize and how to bring something like that into their marketing system so they get the most out of that and start to grow their audience, or even more importantly, start to nurture their existing audience. So if that's something, once you get that going and need some help with that, obviously reach out to me. You can go to sellingcoaching.com and fill out the form at the bottom of the work with me page. I can follow up with you